High class, chapter 10, and the market for pharmaceuticals. Such an interesting topic, pharmaceuticals. I don't know, I want to say, in a sense, that it's my favorite of all the markets, but in other senses, I find hospitals more interesting, but pharmaceutical is definitely extremely interesting. I think the chapter covers most of the things that I would, probably talk about on if I had to give a 1 hour lecture on this, which I'm about to do. But there's definitely more. There's definitely more to it. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about what happens before the research. Well, doing the research and before the research for a new pharmaceutical happens. There's so much more there. And in a sense, that is a very competitive market, the research and before research. But after the research is completed, that's when things get a little bit twisted. And we go from a market that appears very, very highly competitive, we go to a market that does not seem competitive at all, and then eventually it turns competitive again. So let's look into that. Let's see what I mean by that. All right. So the chapter starts by telling you a story. It's an old story, but it's not that old. But it's a story that repeats itself over and over and over. And actually, I would even argue that it's happening faster and faster, if you will. So what the story is about is the idea that right around this period of time after 2010, like 2014 and 15, 16, we had an incredible amount of new drugs going out of patent. The patents are expiring on these drugs, and things happen at that point. So what happens in general terms, and I'm sure I'm going to say this again, in general terms, what happens is you discover, you research a drug, you get it approved. That could be easily 10 to 12 years. It gets approved, you get granted a patent that protects you for 20 years. So during 20 years, technically you are the only supplier of that drug in the market, so you get to enjoy full market power for 20 years, and then at the end of the 20 years, the patent expires, other people can compete. So what happens then? So what usually happens at that point is that you lose about 50% of your revenue. Your revenue on average will 50% of it will just disappear. It's going to go down by 50%. So it's pretty dramatic. So we're talking about generics. That's the word, right? When the patent expires, generics come in. Not always, but most of the time, if it's profitable, and you lose 50% of your revenue. So that's going to trigger a lot of things, right? So that's a very good, interesting story. But like I said, I could create this list for every 3-year period at any time in the future, and it will still be true. There's always something coming out of patent. Historically, the pharmaceutical industry has relied on private initiative, on private money. That's always been true. It's been true in every country. It's kind of like it's the nature of the beast. But they have enjoyed some spillover, some externalities from government and academia and others. There's a certain amount of benefit they get from other research that is not directly financed by private money, and that is true. But the government itself does not sponsor, or sponsors very little, what we call applied research, which is intended towards the commercialization, the production of something that is consumed by the public. In other words, the government does not research drugs that we take when we're sick, but the government and others are heavily involved in what we call basic research, which is just a general advancement of technology and knowledge in the pharmaceutical industry. So just, so you see that the relationship is there. There's a line between the two, but there's a lot of spillover. There's a lot of positive externalities. That is, if you remember, positive externalities is that those externalities are cost and benefits that one market imposes on another one, even though that second market is not related to the first market directly. So a lot of that for sure. And then is the numbers. The numbers are astronomical. What is different? One of the things that we find different in this market to other markets that we've seen, like the hospital market, physician market, the nursing, the market for nurses, which we'll see later, I believe. I think it's chapter 12 or 13. I don't remember. Is that you are now looking globally, right? So if you pick a hospital in the United States, the hospitals market is actually, it's not even the United States. It's just the area around the hospital, right? The geographic area around it. Yes, there are some hospitals that do attract people from other areas, including even some from abroad, but it's not that significant compared to the pharmaceutical, where these prescriptions are sold around the world, everywhere in the world. And that makes it very interesting and complex. And just look at the amounts, before we even get to the amounts of sold and produced and sold, look at the amounts in research, right? Just the top 10 largest pharmaceutical companies spent over $70 billion in 2012 in research and development. $70 billion. That's a lot. And that's roughly around 15% of their sales. And that's actually true for most pharmaceutical firms. They spend between 15 and 20% in research and development, which is very, very, very high for any firm to spend that kind of money. I should probably put together a table of industries and what they spend, but it's a very, very high number if you think about it, that, of your sales, you spend that much just in research and development. Interesting, the fact that 75% of the total research is actually based here in the United States. And of that number, big chunk of that is based right around Massachusetts. Specifically, exactly around where I am right now, sitting down and talking to you and having a cup of coffee. Because from my window, I can see Bristol Myers, I can see Sanofi, and right around the corner, I see, who am I trying to, Genzyme. Well, I see Philips Health. I see all of these companies right around me. And I really mean I literally see them. I can see them out the window. So these industries, these companies in this industry, the way they make money is really by pushing new drugs out. That's how they make money. That's how they survive. They need to keep pumping new drugs into the market. That's how they make the money. Because remember, after the patent is over, they have a significant drop in sales for existing drugs. So they need to. The only way to recover is by introducing new drugs with new patents that can last another 20 years and keep making those extraordinary profits that they need, right? Because they need the extraordinary profits so they can continue doing the research and development that is required to maintain that type of business. And just historically, for the up until, I don't know, probably the 50s or the 60s, most of the prescriptions that were out there, the drugs that were out there, were very basic. They were plant-based, etc. I'm not an expert, of course, on pharmaceutical compounds, but it was pretty much like that. But it was it was later on in the 70s when we started discovering all of these receptors in the body, and we understood how to influence, probably not the right word in medicine, but we started understanding how to block those receptors. That's probably a better word. and get the outcome that we are looking for. That's what created the explosion in pharmaceutical production. Like I said before, and I will say it again, and I'll probably say it 10,000 more times, pharma and patents kind of go together, right? That's probably all you know. That's probably the only thing that people know about pharmaceuticals is the patents. So yes, in the United States and internationally, those that agree to our international standards, when you get approved for a patent, when it's granted to you, you get to enjoy 20 years. That's pretty good, right? To enjoy 20 years of total market power. But of course, you need to keep in mind that if it takes you, on average, 10. I used to think that it was 10. That's how it was taught to me many years ago, or what I knew about the pharma. But now I hear that it's more than 10. It goes into 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. The time that it takes to complete, to go from ideation to a drug in the market, it could take up to 15 years. So that means that if you have an idea, you get a patent. If it takes you 15 years to actually do all the research and development and all the FDA approval, you only have 5 to 8 years to enjoy the extraordinary profits that you're going to make on this drug, that you're going to exercise your monopoly power on that drug. So think about that, right? If you're spending such a huge amount of research, such a huge amount of money in research and development, and you're only going to have 5, 8, 10 years to sell it at high prices, you're going to charge very high prices because the time is ticking, right? There's some exceptions to this. If a firm is pursuing what is called an orphan drug. An orphan drug is those drugs that treat very rare diseases, and therefore the value of producing that type of drug is very, very low. So usually pharmaceuticals used to shy away from it because it just didn't make any sense spending so much money and not getting the benefit. In that case, you can get an exclusive right to manufacture to help you make that decision, to help you financially, so you can do the research and development. And here's a quick table that shows you how that kind of looks like. In terms of the research, the process of going from ideation to research and development to trials to approval, and then the period that you finally get to profit, and that's the breakdown. This is as of 2011, and I truly believe the numbers that you see are going up. These are old numbers, but close to what they are today. But it's pretty scary, right? It takes that long to get a drug to the market. Just look at the clinical trials right there. You're spending, what is that, 3, 4, 6 years, in just in the clinical trials. And then you have the review by the FDA on top of that. So, this will be part of your research, but the FDA approval will be about a year to a year and a half. It just occurred to me. I was just thinking that I know these numbers, but I don't have a benchmark to compare with other countries. I actually need to do that. I need to look at how this looks in other countries. I am going to assume that in other countries the numbers are slightly lower, at least when it comes to federal, whatever they call it in those countries, but national approval. Something tells me it's going to be lower, just by the fact that they probably have less things to approve. So now to the economics of those patents. So why do we care about patents in economics? Because they create market power, they create monopolies. It distorts prices. When you have market power, you're going to you're going to affect prices far more than if you are in a competitive market. So we know that market power, and in this case a monopoly, we know what's going to happen: lower quantity, higher prices, and that's where we are. That is true. We all know that in other countries, like it's just Canada, prices are lower. We know that. And why would that be? If they have a patent, what's going on there? Well, what goes on there is that, remember the hospital, let's bring an old friend back. Remember the hospitals and price discrimination, cost shifting. Remember the cost shifting when they are charging higher prices to those insured through private insurance than those in Medicare. Well, it's kind of like the same thing. The pharmaceutical companies, having market power, having a monopoly, they actually get to charge different prices for the same prescription. They get to charge different prices around the world, because now they get, so where the hospitals are facing two big buyers, right? Medicare and private insurance. Private insurance, of course, is going to be divided by many insurance companies. In the case of the pharmaceutical companies, they are facing many countries, and they're going to have many different prices and situations, which is very interesting, and we're definitely going to talk more about that. And as you know, ultimately, a monopoly power, what it's going to do is it's going to set prices above its marginal cost, right? It's going to pick that amount where the marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and then the price is going to be set by going up at that quantity, going up to the demand curve, and to the left to the y-axis, and that's going to be the price. So they're going to charge a price way above marginal cost, way above average cost. Let's take a look at how that would look on a graph. So say we're looking at a pharmaceutical company with a patent on a new drug, and they're going to behave, as you know, marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and this is going to be the marginal cost. So that would be the quantity Q1 and the price P1. Now, assume, and this is why we have this flat line here, assume that they were not a monopoly, that they were actually a company competing in a perfect competitive market. Then there will be what we call price takers. And a price taker, if you recall, faces a flat average variable cost. So if this was a competitive market, the marginal cost curve will go up to the demand curve, and that will be the quantity that they will supply at C1. Competition prices will be set at that point. But they're not. They are setting the prices here where the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue, and then up to the demand curve and across. So this is concerning, of course, the higher price, but what is very concerning is, of course, the quantity, right? There's less quantity supplied in the market while they're enjoying the benefits of the patent, the protection of the patent. But what if people have insurance? What happens then to prices? Okay, so let me get my pen so I can make some notations here. Okay, pen. All right, great. So what we have, if you look at if you look here, right, the D1 marginal revenue, that's our marginal revenue equals marginal cost, the Q1 up to P1, everything from the previous chart. So everything here, this area is our previous chart. Okay, just a monopoly, behaving like a monopoly, setting prices where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and then a price up to the demand curve. Good. But now, say that people have insurance. So if they have insurance, right, if you think about it, it's as if the price went down. kind of, because they're not paying for the full. They're not paying full price. So, if say that the insurance company covers the prescription at 50%, right? So they introduce a copay of 50%, so you're only responsible for 50% of the cost. That is going to immediately signal the pharmaceutical to raise prices by the inverse of that number, right? Because people are now getting a lower price at the end, right? So if you're consuming, if you want to buy a burger at $1 and I cut down the price to 50 cents, well, now you're going to buy 2, right? Because it's half. But because I know that those 50 cents are actually coming from, someone is going to give you the 50 cents, right? I'm actually going to raise the price so you go back to exactly where you were consuming one burger. So I am going to take the benefit away of the insurance. I'm going to take it away from you because I'm a monopoly and I can do that. So this is how this looks. So we go from D1, we now have D2. So D2, should I write? Let me write it there. D2 is with, not working well. Let me delete that. Let me do it again. I don't know what those lines are. Okay. D2 is with insurance. D1 is without insurance. That's the one from before. So the demand shifts up to indicate that for the same Q1 amount, right? Before we used to individuals were willing to pay P1 for Q1. But if someone is going to pay for half of my prescription, then I'm willing to buy something that is twice as much because half of it is going to be paid by someone else, the insurance company, which puts me back in the same place. Insurance companies know that. So that means that the insurance company is going to behave exactly the same way. Nothing changes. They're going to set production where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. They're going to produce Q1 as before, but now the price, instead of being P1, they're basically going to charge twice as much, right? They're going to charge P2. The insurance company is going to pay for half. The individual is going to pay for the other half, and going to go back for the individual. They're going back to exactly the same point they were before, consuming Q1 for P1, and the insurance company is going to pay for the difference. So what happened here is that by creating insurance, you're just bringing more food to the table for the insurance, for the pharmaceutical to take away from everybody else. They're just going to get a bigger piece of meat, if you will. I need to add that when I'm saying that if people are covered by a policy that pays for half, then the insurance company is going to increase the price by they're going to double the price. That is exactly not 100% true in every single case, because for that to be true, we'll have to make it will have to be the case where the cost of producing the drug is zero, and this is beyond this class, a little more complicated. We don't need to get into that, but it will be somewhere between zero and between nothing and double, right? The increase, but definitely it will get very, very close to doubling. So I still have let me get rid of this. Sorry. So is it worth it? Is this system that we have where we give pharmaceutical companies the benefit of a patent so they can create extraordinary profits for themselves in exchange for these amazing drugs? Is this the right model? Is this worth it to us? is this very high cost of research and development, is it worth it? Yes, it is worth it. Because these therapies, and we had the conversation about vaccines and others, but these therapies, these new therapies, do bring the cost down of total care tremendously. Number one, right? Just, I don't need to mention any of them, but they bring down the cost of care, in some cases even avoiding things like surgery. And not only that, but they also increase something that I haven't talked enough in this class, but if for total welfare of the nation or the community, they increase productivity of its individuals. Some individuals who would be excluded from the labor force because of a condition, now by taking these drugs, are back into the workforce, and they can work. And even those who never left the workforce, they are more productive, right? So I mean, just think about things as simple as flu medicine, things that, in the past, if you had the flu, like, oh my God, I can't go to work, oh, I can't go to school, but now you take something and off you go. Spreading it to everybody else. But your productivity is higher. And of course, as well, the fact that new prescriptions, new drugs, can slow down the progression of certain diseases, of course, cancer and others, and in some cases delay, but definitely it slows down the progress of some diseases, which is great. Here are some examples of some diseases and how much it will cost for the surgery, how much would it cost for the drug therapy. The savings are obviously are pretty clear. In some cases, maybe not, but in most cases they are. So here is one force, right, of in this semester. I feel like we're always talking about the forces that push prices up. Here's one force that that push cost up. Here's one force that pushes cost down. Technically, theoretically, should push the cost down. I think it does. Even considering the high price we pay for pharmaceuticals, it brings down the price. And if it's not in the short run, it sure is in the long run. One interesting aspect of the pharmaceutical industry that we don't see as much in other sectors of the healthcare market is the tremendous amounts of money they spend on advertising and promotion. Well over 29 billion a year. It was 27 billion back in 2010, but it's much higher today. You know that when you watch TV and listen to the radio, you hear about it. They have those really weird commercials that we watch where you're like, what is this about? And then finally you kind of figure it out, and then they tell you all the side effects that it has and all the potential problems, and they seem to last for an hour. This very, very well acted and very very well put together commercials for pharmaceuticals, as they should be. What is very, very alarming is the amount of money they spend. They spend, according to what I see here, I didn't check. I don't have new numbers on this, but pharmaceutical companies spend twice as much on the administration and marketing that they spend on research and development. That's not good, right? Because I have been advocating for them and all the money they spend on bringing to market all of this wonderful prescription and drugs and compounds and all that, but they spend a lot of money on farmers, on marketing. And why would that be? What that tells me is that if they're spending so much on marketing, it's because there's some aspect of competition there. If there was no competition, why would they spend on marketing? Definitely a topic for a lot of research. What do we know is that new drugs, we're still talking about, in general, we're still talking about those new drugs still protected by a patent. They sell 3-6 times higher than their cost of production. And to do that, part of it is the marketing that reinforces that strategy. So they do that to keep up those prices. Most of the money spent on marketing and sales beyond the TV commercials. I mean, don't think that they're spending billions on. Well, they spend a lot of money, but not billions in commercials. They spend a lot of money in direct sales and marketing to providers. And that's really where they make, where they really get their money, because it is, that it is really up to the doctor in the office, right? When you go to the office and the doctor is going to prescribe you something, and the pharmaceutical companies, they know that they need to inform those doctors about the benefits of that new drug, and because they want to steer the doctor to prescribe that. So there's a lot of marketing at the in the office setting and at the hospital setting. The textbook goes into a lot of detail when it comes to this. I don't think I do. Yeah, I don't on the slides, but definitely please read about it. A lot of regulation, a lot of changes over the years on what can be on how things need to be advertised on TV, radio, and on print for consumers. There's a lot of regulation, but bottom line, just in general terms, the government considers that there are 3 different types of marketing. There is the product claim, where if the pharmaceutical is claiming a benefit of a prescription, then the ad itself has to contain all the information. It has to disclose all the benefits and all the benefits, the diseases that it treats, the side effects. It has to be very comprehensive. And if they disclose all of those things, they're allowed to give the name of the prescription. They can say, like, blah blah blah, buy this because it's going to do this for this disease, and perhaps at the cost of that. So that's kind of like the highest level. Then there are the second type is what we call help seeking. These are very interesting, and they're sometimes you watch them on TV and you might miss them. The commercial will talk about a disease, a condition, but it will not talk about the drug. It will not name the drug. If that is the case, they don't have to disclose the benefits, the side effects. They don't have to say anything about that. Okay? Because all they're doing is mentioning that there's a disease out there, and if you think you have it, go to the doctor. The doctor will tell you all about it. Okay? Much shorter commercial. If you don't know about this, you'll probably pay attention from now on, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And then there are all the third type of commercial that is regulated and approved in the United States, of course, for TV and radio. They can mention the drug, but they don't mention the condition that it treats. So I can say, I am blah 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 blah, and I recommend you ask your doctor about this prescription. That's it. You don't say what condition it treats. Just go to the doctor and ask them about this. It's wonderful. You'll find out what it treats later. That's what we call the reminders. So each of them has very, very specific rules and as I just described. Very interesting. Especially because right now I cannot think of the law, rules, regulation that regulates marketing for hospitals. I just can't right now. I have to think. I have to think about it. And you can't talk about the pharmaceutical industry and not talk about the FDA, right? The FDA controls all the approvals, oversize the trials. They're a key component. We all know it. We all learn. Everybody learned about it during the 2020 the COVID vaccine phases there with what we did, how the FDA figured out how to approve the drugs, the vaccines faster than ever before. It's very, very interesting how they operate. It has been highly, highly criticized, especially in the United States. Again, in other countries, it has a different name. It's not called the FDA, but it's highly criticized. It is extremely cautious the way it does things because they don't want to do harm. That's the one thing. They cannot take risk. Harm is the one thing that they must avoid at all cost, even at the cost of possibly rejecting some drugs that have a lot of benefit to humans. If there is a chance, they're going to reject it. So we talk about type 1 and type 2 types of error. So type 1 is when you, by mistake, of course, you made a mistake, you allowed a harmful drug into the market. You looked at it, it had a lot of benefits, but there's something that causes harm, so you approved it. So you approved this, you approved the drug, and now it's going to do harm. Type 2 is kind of like the opposite. You delay a drug from the market, or you don't approve it at all, because you are afraid of something that it could do to the patients. In this case, you're being cautious, overly cautious. You don't want to cause harm, but of course, when you reject or delay a drug, you're reducing competition and you're raising overall cost. What is interesting about these two types of errors, we are more concerned with type 2. That is, with type 1. Type 1 is the big, you're trying to avoid, you're trying to avoid both, right? Type 2 does not have medical effects in terms like you're not going to kill anyone by making type 2 error, but if you make type 1 error, people could die. So type 1 is highly visible. If you mess up, if the FDA makes a mistake, you're going to find out about it. If they make a type 2 error, you're not going to find out about it. Nobody's going to tell you. You're not going to see. You're not going to see the news going to a pharmaceutical company like, oh my God, they're not allowing us to commercialize this prescription because no, that's not going to happen. Type 1 is the one you're going to find out, and that's the scare there. So where is this industry going? The markups are here to stay in some way or another, in some flavor, and the high profits and the margins and that should stay. That is going to stay, and it should stay because it's what fuels the research and development. Not much we can do about that. What you're going to see is more efforts, globally for sure, definitely in North America, and frequently, very frequently, occasionally perhaps in the United States. You're going to see different U.S. administrations trying to put caps and making changes to in the pharmaceutical industry to control prices. Interesting is that the fact that, for example, in Canada, where they have huge price controls on prescriptions because of their system is a public system, prices have come down. Yes, they have come down a lot. You all know that Americans go to Canada to buy prescriptions. I can't remember. Canada RX, is that one of the companies that does that? They've been doing it for many years, but now they even do it through mail, which is a very weird thing. I have been asked by clients about that, about Canada RX, so they know about it. What is interesting is that since Canada has started imposing these price controls on pharmaceuticals, the Canadian pharmaceutical industry for new drugs, the new drugs developed in Canada have just ceased to exist. It's gone. Canada wiped out Canada and almost every other country in the world by imposing these controls, wiped out their research and development for new drugs. That is why new drugs that is why most pharmaceutical companies around the world have and are still moving to the United States because they know this is where the research and development pays off. So that's why the United States controls the development of new drugs. If you want to see what I have on the next one, yeah, I'm going to go to that one. I'll go to the next slide and I'll tell you there. So here's the issue. Here's the big issue. We Americans pay high prices for prescriptions. We believe that. I disagree with that. I don't think we pay that much. I think the studies, and I'm going to be playing some videos for you guys in the class. I think the studies that I've seen are biased and they're not telling the whole truth because they are looking at prices before insurance, before rebates, before a whole bunch of things. And more importantly, they're not taking those prices and comparing them to income per capita, average salaries, or some kind of measurement like that. If you do that, you will actually get a completely different picture, where the American consumer, the citizen, the American consumer, does not pay as much as you think they pay. What is happening is that these companies overseas, these countries overseas who are imposing these controls, they're imposing these very tight controls on pharmaceuticals. Well, number one, why do they do that? Oh, because they don't care. Because the prescriptions are made in the United States. Why will you get? Now I'm going into international trade, which is one of my favorite subjects. But when you're talking about international trade and you're a country, like, you don't care about imposing price controls on the producer if this one is overseas. You bear none of the cost. Those are not people that vote for you. Those are not people that work in your country. They're not workers from your country. You don't care. You just want to protect the people that live in your country. So they can do that at no cost. The problem is that when they do that by putting price controls on international pharmaceutical companies, when they do that, what they're doing is they're transferring. Does this sound familiar to you? Does this sound like cost shifting in hospitals and Medicare insurance companies? What they're doing is they're shifting the cost to Americans. So they are free riding. What they're doing is they're not sharing the cost of the research and development. They refuse to do it, and they're transferring that to Americans. And Americans have to pay the high price so the research and development can continue. So it is Americans who are subsidizing and fueling the development of just about almost an extremely high level of all new therapies and drugs around the world. And, well, I don't think that's fair. I don't know. I don't want to talk about what fair is, because that's an interesting concept. But economically, that is a little bit not right. Okay, and I think that's it. Thank you.